Hey, welcome to the Cam and Otis Show. We're a father-son business podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And quite possibly the best father-son business podcast out there. We decided that the other day. We're going to start a new award.
Google Father Son
Google.
Business Podcast. You ain't going to see
right.
anybody else.
Okay. That's right. We're gonna make our own like JD Power and Association, create our own award that we can win every year.
I like that.
That's what I'm thinking.
Right. That
Hey, and today, man, I'm super excited. We've got Eric Holtzclaw joining us, a marketing expert, which is something I always have fun playing in that world and screwing it up bigger than Dallas. And Eric, man, it is great to see you. How you doing today?
I am good. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, and I apologize to all our regular listeners, but every marketer, I always just about always ask the same question, and that is, what in the world got you into marketing? Or were you that guy, in high school that went around and is like, hey, guys, what y'all doing? What y'all doing? Were you that guy or what? What got you into marketing?
Absolutely not. So I a diehard introvert. I don't know how I ended up in this seat in front of podcasts and doing all kinds of things like that. So I'm a recovering technologist. So in school, I was the geek that programmed computers and learned how they worked and did all that kind of stuff and ran development jobs actually a lot early in my career. So I would work with the geeks to build stuff and things like that. I worked with some companies out of Silicon Valley for a period of time in their sort of professional services sales organization. And then I owned a research company doing kind of like understanding what made people tick. And then I accidentally started a marketing company. So I sold that research company back in 2012, swore to my wife I wouldn't start another business. And then I did. So now I have Liger. And so Liger, because really if you think about marketing, it's a combination of technology and understanding your user, your customer. It's a really good fit because I can talk to the geeks about what we need to do to get the marketing kind of up and running. But the research side is like, well, what's the message that's going to resonate with someone? What's going to really make them kind of click that button and move forward? Liger is formation. We brought two companies together. So it's a lion and a tiger to form a Liger. It's also Napoleon Dynamite's favorite animal from the movie, if you saw the movie. And so if I was going to start a marketing firm, I want something that was fun because typically when you do tech and things like that, you create boring brands that are blue in some way. So Liger is orange, and we play a lot into the Napoleon sort of background. So we had a prom a year or so ago with another company, and basically we have a disco ball that's permanently hung in the Liger layer and those kind of things. But yeah, so I was not a marketer. I came to it later, but I enjoyed it. It's really a very good kind of combination of all the things that I've done in my past.
You talked about being able to like connect those two different worlds, the geeks and the marketers and that kind of thing. Is that a big disconnect? We talk a lot, like I feel like the stereotypical answer is like the sales and the marketing is when we talk about a lot.
Yeah.
How big of an impact does the geeks and the marketers disconnect have on a lot of businesses out there?
I mean, I think that's a huge thing. So if you look at prior to 2008, marketing really wasn't reliant heavily on technology. It wasn't a thing, or they didn't have to know it as well. Now to get things done, you need to really understand how to tell the technologist, I need a landing page, or we've got to do emails and drip campaigns, and how do we stand this up and stand that up? And so if you've got just a traditional marketing background, all of a sudden you have to learn this whole other language that you don't know. And so I know when they're lying to me, when they tell me they can't do something, and I know they can. Or I have a team that can just do it for them. And often when we work with companies, we take over their technology stack, at least their marketing technology stack, so that we have control of that. So any content we're building, anything we want to do, we don't really have to wait on the IT people. And it's really not their fault. So in IT world, I do something once and it's permanent. So I want to fix a thing and I don't want to have to go back and touch it again. If I'm going to stand something up or correct it, it needs to be bulletproof. Marketing is technology, but it's with experimentation. So I may want to try something this month, and then next month I need to try something else, and I need to switch out the message. So it's never really finished. It's never complete. And that drives most IT people crazy. Like they want to check a box and say that it's done and move on. So there's a natural sort of friction between the two types of organizations. And there was a report, and this was years ago, that the marketing, like the CMO of most companies, controls more technology than the CTO does, because so much of marketing is reliant on technology. but they weren't taught how to do it. So in our work with our clients, we're often filling that gap for them, where we're sitting on the calls to kind of talk to their technologists about how we're actually going to deploy this, and we promise we're not going to break everything. So I think it's a missing. It's anyone who goes into marketing. If I'm talking to like a college student or whatever, I tell them you should take a couple of technology classes. You really do need to understand like how the development works and how all the things kind of plug together. So at least you can kind of hold your own in one of those meetings.
How do you balance that or manage it? Maybe a better way of putting it, in that, because I'm also here thinking in the same sense of introvert.
Yeah.
Technology. I mean, technology world is great for introverts, right? Because you can close the door and you can code and create something and stay in your own little box. Don't bother me, sort of thing.
Right.
And in that same sense with the marketing and the getting it out there, the techie guy wants the code to be just right, no bugs, because that's how I get graded. But the marketer has to toss it out there and say, well, let's just see if this works. How do you manage all that?
Yeah, I think that's why it was a good fit for me, because I did in really early programmed, and I went to computer camp, and other people were going to like, outdoor camp and stuff like that. I would do outdoor camp one week and computer camp the next. And when I went to college, I was like, I'm going to get a degree in computer science. At that time, that's what it was. And when I realized what that meant, it meant that I was going to sit in front of a computer and program 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I was like, oh no, I don't want to do that. No, that sounds like a terrible idea. Right. And so I figured out how to, at the very beginning, apply business to technology. So because I understood technology, like how do you bring that to business? And then really marketing sort of drug us along, because marketing became so much about technology. So it's the person who has kind of the interest in technology, but they don't see themselves, so much sitting in a cube. I'm an introvert, but meaning that like, I'm not the guy who's going to go to a party and introduce myself to everybody and, whatever. Like I'm always kind of the wallflower, right? Like I literally can go to a networking event and meet no one. I can go and there can be 2,000 people in the room. I can walk in, go to the event, walk out, and have met not a person. Which
get your 2 free drinks and then walk out.
I'm good. And I had a great time, right? I learned something. And that is naturally curious. So like someone who's naturally curious, if you like, the new thing, the next thing, keeping up with trends, like what's going to happen around the corner, that's a part of it too. If you're a past thinker, if you think, you're kind of historically oriented, you like things to be done once and never again, then it's probably not the space for you. It is a place where I caution people in marketing, because you have 2 choices. You can either go to work for a company and be a marketer at a company, or you can go to work for an agency where you work with a lot of different companies. And so if you don't like things changing and things being kind of weird and whatever, you shouldn't work for an agency, because in agency land, we're working with a couple dozen clients. They all have different personalities, different approaches to the market. I think that's great. Like every day we got to think about the portfolio and what we're going to do next. If you find that's overwhelming, then working with a company, then you're promoting one set of products and services, and you can kind of stay with that over time, and you don't have to make as many changes. So yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about like what not necessarily the mistakes that are happening in leadership, but like what are, we talked about that disconnect and, trying to balance those 2 different areas. What does that actually look like? Not just I sent this email to my tech guy and he's pissed off at me and didn't respond. It's like, what does it look like inside the organization?
Yeah. It's less, technology is often just, they want the marketing tech stack, typically when I talk with them, just out of their control, because they understand that it's different from, making sure email works and that, the servers don't go down and all their back end systems. The mistakes I see made at the leadership level as it relates to marketing is a lack of consistency and persistence in the marketing's world. It's very much like going to the gym. If I go to the gym one time, I don't expect that I'm going to walk out and, have developed 6-pack abs and now I can run 20 miles and whatever. For some reason,
I got a new PR today. I'm done for the next 6 months,
exactly. Right? And I don't understand why leaders think that. Like they're like, well, we've done this. We did social media for like a week and we didn't see any leads. And I'm like, yeah, that's just not how it works. And so it's a 6 to 8 month payoff. And I liken it as much to working with a financial advisor as anything else. So with a financial advisor, you give them a set of money and you tell them, or at least if you're me, you say, as long as it moves up and to the right, I want you to let me know, there's certain things I'm interested in, whatever, but growth stocks, bonds, blah, 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 like just make sure that whatever money I give you is moving up and to the right. And so your marketing spend, if you have the right advisors in place within your company and outside, should be spent that way and should move you up and to the right. And you should trust the fact that there's maybe a trend that they need to go after, but you can't do shiny object syndrome. It can't be like, oh, Bitcoin's a big deal now, and this is a big deal. And this, no, we got to do something because we're experimenting. And the longer we experiment, the more predictable it is as to what we should spend and where we should spend it. So talk about moving marketing from being a slot machine, which is what most marketing is. So I stick it in and I don't know if I'm going to get anything back, to turning it into a vending machine. So if I spend $1 in this category, I expect to get back $100. And so that's what works. And the second that I start spending that dollar in that vending machine and the $100 doesn't work anymore, something has changed. Like there's a new way that consumers are looking at things. Maybe the platform I'm on is not the right one. And then I need to start experimenting. So we're moving people along. We call it BACCOM. So it's branding, awareness, traffic, conversion, optimization, and maintenance. So BACCOM. Every single person wants conversion. They don't care about any of the other letters. Like, I just want it to convert. Well, we have to start at the beginning. So what's your brand look like? Do people know you exist? Awareness. Are you getting traffic? Once you get traffic, I can convert it. And then once we're converting, we look at optimization and maintenance. So we want to live in optimization and maintenance as much as possible. But when those aren't working the way that we expect, it's just like your diet. It's just like something changed. I need to go back and rethink about it. So we're backing people up from conversion because everyone who comes to us and spends the dollar wants a conversion, but maybe they don't have any traffic. If you have no traffic to your website, I can't convert it. Like, I can't convert it. If nobody's coming to your store, we can't convert them, right? So they have to know that you exist. And if they know that you exist and there's some problems with your brand is the most important initial point because that's what people see to begin with and decide whether or not you're for them, if you're something they're going to be interested in.
Oh, that's awesome. And I just got to make a note for Camden, 6 to 8 months. Okay. The clock's ticking. All right.
6 to 8 months. That's when you know.
Right. I'm watching it.
Well, and it also includes the number of it. So there was a period of time with marketing, somebody would need to see something 7 to 8 times before their awareness was established. Mm-hmm. That's increased to 21 times. So it's now like somewhere between 18 to 21 times. And it's because there's so many messages, so many things out there. It's also because the average attention span of a goldfish is 8 seconds. The average attention span of a human being is 7. So we have less attention span than a goldfish. And so what it takes to like get in front of people, and people do such boring marketing too. Like they'll do something that you don't even notice. And so that doesn't even count. Like if it's just going to fade in the background, you might as well not have done it. So we need 20 to 21 times of something that really stays in front of me. It has to be within my ecosystem in places that I am, not where you want it to be. And then all of a sudden I'm in that kind of, oh yeah, like there's this thing, maybe I should think about buying it, or I should do it.
There's an interesting kind of push and pull that happens, especially in social media marketing. I would imagine there's similar effects in other areas, but I haven't been there as much, where it's constantly changing environment. And because of that, people are learning the tricks, basically. How I was talking with our old producer, Norman, over the weekend, and I was talking about how quickly do you think you can recognize an ad when you're going through like reels on Instagram? And those ads that are videos, they could be a funny video, they could be entertaining, they could have the bright colors and all the different stuff. You still, like, within half a second know it's an ad and swipe it away before you even read anything.
Right.
Like, how can businesses and entrepreneurs try to stay ahead of that curve? Or is it almost something where it's like you don't need the tricks because people know the tricks, so it's like, quit trying to trick people, quit trying to make it perfect like that, just get out there consistently. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's probably why it's an ad. It's probably too perfect. So if you've ever seen the book, Malcolm Gladwell, Tipping Point, so he talks about how people can tell the difference between a fake statue and a real one, even if they're not formally trained. So like there was the statue in a museum, and even people who weren't, trained to look at them would say, yeah, that's a fake statue. It's just something was off. And so when we're scrolling through, typically those ads they've been shot with a certain type of video. There's like a polish to them. There's whatever. And your brain immediately picks it up. From a branding perspective, that is manna. Like we are looking for you recognizing the brand before you see the logo. And so like Target and Apple and some of these others, like, it's a Target ad before you see a Target logo. It's an Apple ad before you see an Apple logo, right? So that's not bad. It's not necessarily bad as long as it's like, oh, okay, there was something for Apple. Well, I'm not in the market for Apple right now, but Apple's in my head, right? So it's about what you're trying to achieve and understanding that there's different ways that customers are coming to you. So are they coming to you for a transactional need? So like during the holiday season, if you want to sell me something, run an Instagram ad, because that's the only place I ever buy anything. Like I'm on Instagram. I'm like, oh, I need something for my dad. That's perfect. Like, let me buy it. But most of the stuff we work with takes a long time for someone to recognize and know. And so it's important, number one, that you get the branding established. And then when you're talking about like, am I going to pay attention to it? You start to pay attention to it when you know that you've got a need, like you've been moved to some category of need. So even if it is an ad, you'll pay attention to it because you might need new internet service because yours is flaky or whatever that is. So I'm not against them. And I think from a brand perspective, you can try to play the game of making it feel like it's not as polished, but you may want it to be polished so that people remember that it's your brand. So, it's more important. I was talking to somebody the other day, like big companies have a lot of money. They can make a mistake. When they do their branding, they don't. They are very, like, their brand always looks the same way. It's always consistent. It always shows up in a certain way. And you find small companies don't spend as much time caring about those fine details that are going to let you know that that's their brand, color choice, whatever. And they don't have the money to waste. Like, it should be far more important to a small business that their brand is always on point, always looks the right way, always has the same message than it would be to a large company.
Without giving away the secret sauce, what are some of those little things that a lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs miss when it comes to that branding aspect?
It's literally no secret sauce. It's like, I've worked with one company that had 7 versions of the same logo, which was supposedly their logo, right? In different colors and things. It's like, your color is your color is your color. Do not change it. Make it, we put, when we're working with a company, we're thinking about rebranding. We take all their competitors and put them on a color wheel to see where the competitors cluster. So if they all cluster in one category, we try to get them to pick something outside of that category. So if you think of like financial institutions and insurance, almost always pick green and blue. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to pick something, go orange or yellow or red, right? So yeah, it's even the messaging, like the words you use, the way you say something, the way you kind of show up, there's a polish to that. And small companies don't spend the time to polish and establish structure and rules. And part of it is because they're doing it too quickly. So they're not paying, there's not the same kind of like rigor that you have to go through. But it should feel and look and smell like your brand the second you look at it. A good way to look at it is if you're running an Instagram page, if you pull up an Instagram page and look at it for a brand, it should feel very consistent across every single, because you can use filters on social media that, change the colors to make sure that they're closer to your brand colors or complementary. It's just small, like almost unrecognized things, like things that your unconscious mind is going to see.
I'm laughing because I'm hearing our branding buddy, Ethan, talking in the back of my head, poking me. He's not just talking, he's poking me in the back of the head right now. Otis, I'm telling you.
Well, we put brands, there's you as an individual have a brand. Like when Otis, when you're wearing a baseball hat, right? So you're wearing a baseball hat. There's like a certain thing about you, and here I got the American flag behind you. Like there's some things I can assume based on how you're dressed and what you're doing. Same thing, Camden, and the way that you show up. Your brand is like a person. When we go through brand therapy exercises with our clients, we make them think about the brand as a person. Like if the brand walked in the room, how would it be dressed? What it would say. We do this one called a cocktail party where we say, hey, your brand showed up at a cocktail party. Your competitor's there. Your favorite customer's there. How does it show up? What does it do? And then we make them rewrite it after the brand has had a couple of drinks. So like, okay, the brand's had a couple of drinks. Now what does it do? And that's where you start to see the more interesting things come out, the things that kind of stand out. Like, is it more talkative? Is it more demonstrative about who it is? Like, what is that emphasis that we want to put in place to get people to pay attention? Because honestly, marketing should be visceral. Either make me hate it or love it, but make me have some reaction to it. If it's boring, just don't do it. Like, Our mission statement is saving the world from boring, broken marketing. And we primarily work on B2B marketing, which is either boring or broken or both. And it's because everybody's like, well, what, they want to do like the big motivational posters. I'm like, I'm bored. Like, let's do something fun. It's people, or, have an opinion, of some sort, because that's the only way you're going to attract the customers you want and repel the ones you don't.
Well, you've made me put a whole nother spin in my mind about our whiskey words, because whiskey words obviously is having a drink, but boy, maybe I ought to have two. Maybe I'd have a warm up and then do it.
Do it again. Yeah.
There you go. Oh man, I can tell you already by the time that glass is getting down to the bottom after I've recorded a couple of them, it gets a little bit more saucy.
It is a little more saucy.
I can only imagine what it'd be like if I had a warm up.
Well, and a little warm up. A little warm up like that is a good thing.
I was just going to say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, but I was just going to say that's I've heard that before. If it's like it was like an ancient Persian tradition that it's like you debate an idea sober, then you have some drinks, then you debate the idea again. It's like, okay, it's got to hold up to both of these sets of logic. So there's different sets of logic, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
More emotion,
more embellishment.
I'd love to hear, because there's obviously a passion for that you have for diving into the marketing and the research and getting it shaped right. But you're in charge.
Yeah.
How are you working your way somewhat? Well, I mean, as we're all supposed to, right?
Yep.
Knock, knock, wink, 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 nod, nod sort of thing. As we're all supposed to, from working in our business to working on our business. How are you dealing with that transition? I'm gripping my fist because I know sometimes we don't want to let go.
Yeah. I mean, well, number one, I told you I started this company accidentally. So that's part of it, so that there's a different motivation. I wasn't really supposed to do this again. So when I had my prior company, I read eMyth, which is what you just referenced. I went on like spring break and read eMyth, and I realized I was the only person in the company who could resource what we were doing. We did about 250 to 300 research projects a year. And I was the guy who knew if we could take the project or not, who would be assigned to it. And so I came back and started to fire myself. In fact, that's the first I wrote for Inc. For a very long time. That was the very first article I wrote, was about firing yourself. Like, what do you do to fire yourself? Right. And so when I sold my business in 2012, I can also be a really good right-hand guy to some crazy CEO. So like a CEO and he's trying to run his business. And I was doing operational work for them, and they would end up handing me their marketing department too. And I'd get the operations working, and then I still underdid the marketing. So I ended up with this company. So you're like, okay, Eric, you ended up with this company. How are you getting out of it? Now, there are a lot of things we follow. So we use EOS, the book by Gino Wickman, Traction. So, and that any client, any person who's really trying to figure out how to grow your business and get out of it, doing something like Traction, it doesn't have to be Traction, but something like that is going to be starts to make other people take ownership of the problems that need to be solved. It starts to enforce that the visionary isn't really supposed to be involved in the day-to-day, right? You've got an integrator who's starting to move those things. It has been very, very difficult during the 2019, 2020, 2021 period of time to not be a highly involved and highly active owner of a business. It's one of the toughest periods of time I've ever run a business in my entire career. I'm old enough to have done the dot bombs and 9/11 and the 2008 and all that kind of stuff. It has felt like all of that combined. So I really think we're just now coming to a point where people who've been trying to like unplug themselves in the last couple of years can start to really think about that again. But you can't scale it unless someone else can do it. They're not going to do it the way that you do it. You have to be okay with that, right? As long as it gets done and no one's angry and you don't lose a client or don't lose a customer and the product gets launched and things like that. So it is about some self-therapy, like this, not being a control freak, understanding the source of why you think you still need to be involved. I did, when I was selling the business, I started a podcast in 2011, 2012, and I interviewed entrepreneurs. And what I wanted to find out from them is what were the barriers for them and, really being successful. And I expected them to tell me they didn't have enough money, they didn't have support, whatever. But what I found is that entrepreneurs fall into two categories. There's rectify entrepreneurs and magnify entrepreneurs. Rectify entrepreneurs are entrepreneurs who are doing it because someone told them that they would never succeed in life. They want to prove somebody wrong, they whatever. 80% of entrepreneurs are rectifies, and rectifies are the hardest entrepreneurs to get to give up control and really start putting other people in place because their identity is so tied up into their business. And so if they're not needed any longer, then what are they needed for? Right? Like, what is their purpose beyond the business? Magnifies do a much better job of building something that's, because they're on a mission field, like they're out there building something that's bigger than them. They're motivated by it, like all that kind of stuff. Steve Jobs, interestingly, is a magnify, not a rectify. The reason is he was adopted. At the age of 7 or 8, he went to his parents. He found out he'd been adopted. He told him, Mom, Dad, I was adopted. Someone didn't want me. And his parents said, no, Steve, you don't understand. We chose you. And so the man lived as the chosen one for the rest of his life. And he built something bigger than himself and sort of saw the world that way. So all this nature nurture, like it's a little combination of both. And you really do need to, and it takes some therapy and some awareness, which a lot of entrepreneurs don't want that at all, to understand what's driving you in your business. And if it's something not so healthy, it's going to be really hard for you to uncouple and like build a good succession plan and realize that your real purpose is to not be in the business any longer.
What's that one thing right now that you know that you just have so much fun? I mean, it's that sort of thing that you know you need to just Sally down the hall needs to be doing that for you.
Oh, discovery sessions. Like when we bring a client on, I do the discovery session. It's like 6 to 8 hours, and we call it brand therapy. So I get the client in a room and I have this process I take them through, and I strip their business down and get it down to like, I love that. Now I don't want to deal with the back end of that. I'm like, oh my gosh, like now we've like, it's like the house person who likes to rip the house apart and it's like, oh no, I got to put it all back in. Right. So I love that part of it. It's almost, I do it every day. I energized by it, that kind of thing. And it's going to be difficult for me to teach. I almost probably like when I was doing the resourcing, have to teach separate people to do parts of it because I know how to do the whole thing, but I need to probably have an ensemble working through that. And it's my art, right? So like I'm trying to give somebody the way that I paint the brush, and I'm like, yeah, but I like the way I paint the brush. I like the information I get out. So that's going to be the hardest thing for me to uncouple in this company. Everything else I could teach, from how we finance it and price it and blah, blah, blah. And, I'd gladly give up like being the lead sales guy tomorrow if I could find another salesperson who could sell it as well as I can. Right. But the thing that I'll hold on to the very end will be my coveted discovery sessions. So, yeah.
In that kind of same vein of working on the business is, your growth inside of the industry and trying to, stay on top of the trends, and that, especially in marketing. Oh my gosh. And I think it's interesting because you talk about, like, for example, like take another skill set like leadership. It's great. You can go read, books from like ancient Rome and Greece about leadership. Like, it's like there's so much leadership stuff out there. You can go back and read all this kind of stuff, and then you can apply it to what's happening now. Marketing ain't like that. You can't go back and read. Marcus Aurelius doesn't have a book on marketing. At least I haven't heard it. Heard of it.
Right.
What can you do to like stay on top of those trends and keeps things moving because they change so quickly?
Yeah, it is and marketing is definitely about being naturally curious. So if you're a person who likes to, you decided to join MySpace and you're still there, like marketing may not be your thing. But if you're the one who kind of wants to know what the latest iPhone is, and you're really curious about technology and artificial intelligence and all those things, and you understand them as adoptive technologies, but not something you can avoid, right? Then marketing is a great space. I love disruption. I love disruptive technology. AI, I'm just all over it. I think it's an amazing next wave of stuff, right? As soon as and there may be a point in my career where I'm like, ugh, I am done with all the new things. Like, give me a flip phone and let me go to an island. I probably need to be out of this business, right? Because it's not one that is for that. Like, we have a brand new social media platform as just a couple of weeks ago that didn't even exist, with 100 million subscribers in 24 hours. Artificial intelligence wasn't even a thing we were talking about this time last year. So if you don't just naturally think that's cool, like, how's that going to apply? You're afraid of it, then marketing's not a great space for you. There's some initial tenets of marketing of like, attracting someone and, getting, creative ideas, all those will always live, which is why I'm not afraid of artificial intelligence. Like it has to be curated. Like AI is not a human. They can't cry. It doesn't get angry, right? Like that kind of thing. So we're still talking to humans. So we've moved into a period of curation over creation. So AI creates it and you have to curate it. And so are you curating the right types of things? And how do we know that? And so that's it. Marketing, you got to be curious. You got to like the new cool thing.
Well, in that same sense, though, because, like you mentioned, you avoided saying threads, but I'll say it. But how do you, the business has X dollars.
Right.
And, if I spend $1 on every platform, then I'm not going to do it right.
Correct.
So how do you, the curious, what's the next cool thing, who's helping businesses understand what they should do and how they should do it? How do you balance that going on?
So it's a good question. It has to do with where your customers fit. And so customers are in a couple of categories, and Liger is meant to be an experimental brand. So we go after clients that, at least from a brand perspective, will experiment with something. And when we experiment with it, we're doing on purpose to then potentially bring it to our client base, because we know our client base goes after different kinds of customers. So at a very high level, specifically in B2B, there are 4 types of kind of persona groups. There's a group that's the early adopter. So they're the people who love threads at the very beginning. They want to be the first to try it. They're okay with bugs. They like exclusivity, first to try, that kind of thing. Threads is good for that group today. In about a month or so, they may drop off it because it's not the cool thing anymore. It didn't really do what they expected. They're kind of fickle. So if they don't really love it, then they drop it. But if you don't go after that group first, you never get them. So you have to give them something first. And then it moves to group 2, which is typically fast followers. They like to network. They like to be they look for partnerships. So they're looking for a partner to do something with them. They're working on their business versus in. So that's group 2. Group 3 is working in their business. They're never networking because they can never get out of their business. They see their employees as a cost, not a benefit to their business. They're they're expensive, yada, yada, yada. They don't really invest in them. And then we have a group 4, which is like government and franchise. And those are typically RFPs. There's some restrictions in place. So I need to know which group I'm going after primarily. I'm only allowed to pick one of those. Cannot pick all 4. I can only pick one. So by picking one, I already know what platform I'm on. Group 2 is not really on Threads yet. They're still on LinkedIn. That's their thing. Group 3 and 4 are still maybe stuck over in Facebook. And so we're thinking platforms as it relates to the audience I'm going after, and also understanding platforms, you don't own any of that. That real estate isn't yours. So we want to still invest in things that we own, digital properties, website stuff that we own, because those things will go away. Like Twitter is having a lot of problems. We don't know if that platform is going to be here or what it's going to look like and those types of things. So if I've invested a lot of time, energy, and effort into it, and it disappears tomorrow, and so also goes my revenue stream, that's a huge problem. So we are hedging in a couple of places. We typically want clients to be on at least 2 social media platforms. And social media doesn't have to be Twitter. It could be Reddit. It could be Medium. It could be all kinds of things like other places. But any content they're creating, any properties need to be things they own. They need to own that, because you don't want your store to disappear tomorrow.
Yeah, I've heard too many horror stories of that happening to people.
Yeah, I was with a friend this weekend who's building she's got a very successful little thing she's doing. She's doing it on Facebook. And I was like, do you have a website? Have you built it? She's like, nope, it's all on Facebook. I'm like, you got to build it somewhere else too, because you don't own that. Tomorrow that could disappear.
Yeah.
Talking about the different platforms, it made me think of some advice I heard once talking about investing. Of it's you want to buy on the rumor, you want to sell on the news. Is it when you're in the experimental side? Is that the approach that people should be taking? Of you almost want the rumor of something. Once you see this is a very specific example, Dad, you'll laugh at this. When you see a coaching group of business coaches start talking about putting ads onto a platform, it's too late. It's you get those kind of things. Yeah. Right, because it's already the news. People have already bought the stock. It's all those kind of things. Is that a little bit of the approach to when it comes to the experimental side?
I literally think marketers are financial advisors. I mean, that analogy, I use it all the time. It's like you have a bucket of money you want to spend on marketing. You're probably not, and this is a really strong way to say it, you're probably not smart enough to know where to spend it. And you probably don't have the time to keep up with what's next. So take that bucket of money, give it to a marketer, and then they are investing in a portfolio. And there's a bond component, like things that are going to stay forever. Content is a bond thing, like it pays you over time. In fact, when you release a piece of content, you can't actually judge it for 6 to 8 months. So you put up a blog, you don't know how successful it's going to be because it has to get into the SEO world and all that kind of stuff for about 6 to 8 months. So it's got a slow burn on it. But things like new social media platforms, we should do almost immediately did it hit. So that's your kind of fast growth. But relying on someone else to take your bucket of money you have and place it in all the right places to get you an up and to the right is a really smart way to look at it, because you want all those things to play together. And it is very much, I use a financial advisor. I'm not really doing my own like financial advice stuff, but for our marketing, that's what we do. Like, okay, we've got these dollars. We need to put them here, do this, do that. And that may not be the answer I would give you 30 days from now. 30 days from now, we'd be like, okay, now we put the money here, right? Because it's the landscape has changed.
Man, I've never heard that analogy before, but man, it really resonates with me in that whole investing, because it is. I mean, whether I'm investing in mutual funds or stocks, I'm not the expert. I don't play that game. I've got my buddy Frank, my buddy Mike, they're the experts.
Yeah.
So I say, here's $100.
Right.
Go make more $100.
Exactly. And that's marketing's role, right? Because sales can't sell something that isn't a lead, and marketing has to get you the lead. So like that's part of that. And you wouldn't do that in like tech or your accountant. You don't want an accountant who's betting dollars, right? You want your accountant to do your P&L and your balance sheet and all those kind of things. So this category is more of like, what is your marketing budget? And then let some professionals at least advise you on how to spend it, or just hire someone to spend it. I mean, we're an outsourced marketing firm. Most of our clients are dealing with politics and like the internal goals that their company's setting, and they're relying on us to help them place the dollars and figure out how to spend those most effectively.
How did you, a little bit of a shift in gears to running a business, how did you create this and sustain this really unique culture of kind of the geeky Napoleon Dynamite sort of thing? How'd that get started?
Well, so my company was called Laddering, and there was another company called Briller that we were merging the two businesses together, and we wanted something that represented both. And so Liger came up as one of the options for a name. I loved it because I've got some best friends who I had them watch the movie Napoleon Dynamite, and they hated it because you have to watch the movie twice. If you watch it once, you hate the movie. You watch it twice, you're like, okay, this is kind of fun, right? And so then leaning into it, because Napoleon is like a geek and he's misunderstood, and then he doesn't win the competition at the end. His friend does, because of what he does. And that's how we are. We're an empowerer to our clients. Like they get all the credit, we don't. Like, you barely know that we even exist. We've done all the work on behind the scenes, and we attract, like, part of our internal culture is around geeks. Like, we're looking for the geek, the kind of outcast who find some of the practice areas that we work in a lot of fun, and they really get involved in it, which is really the anti-agency, right? Because agencies, if you think of like Don Draper and Mad Men, it's the martini lunches and the look and all that kind of stuff, and we're in it to like understand it and to make it work. And occasionally I do dress like Don Draper, but it's not that's not the company norm. We're not going in to be the big agency. In fact, we don't call ourselves an agency at all. We call ourselves a marketing firm versus an agency. And it's on purpose. Marketing firm like a law firm, because law firms have people who have different practice areas, intellectual property, torts. We have the same thing internally, people who know content really well, social, SEO, those types of things. And we bring them all to bear when we're trying to solve a client's problems. So it's a different way of thinking and looking at marketing than what the typical known agency does.
There's clearly a lot of the like self-selection aspect of people coming to the company because they relate with those type of things. What do you do with those people to really integrate and take that culture to the next level? Because the self-selection is good. You're probably getting about 90%, 95% of what you want, but how do you get that last 10, 5%?
Well, I mean, we're very strong on, we've got 5 core values that we follow, and we do core value shout outs like Powered by My Pride and Creative Cats and things like that each week. And we hire, fire, promote, and demote based on those core values. If you don't fit, this machine will spit you out, right? Like, and so it's really easily known, like if someone has Liger blood or not when they start at the company. And we go through an interview process that helps to kind of suss that out. And then in the first 90 days, we're as interested in, can you do the job as are you a good cultural fit? And we're in a hybrid space. We've always been there. About half the companies in Atlanta and half's across the United States, Canada. And so to work with people virtually, you have to have, we're doing hard work, right? Like we're trying to get stuff done and delivered, and got to be able to trust each other and sort of build that second language. I do not propose. I've got an integrator who works with me, and she's great with all the internal stuff, and she just does such a great job of reinforcing that. And that's part of why I like the EOS model, because it says the visionary integrator, and typically the visionary is not great at the cultural parts of it. And so, and allowing other people to kind of manage and lead the cultural aspects, because that's more their skill set.
How are you shaping what's next? Both internally and externally.
Yeah. So internally, we have a BHAG. So we have a goal that we're looking for to hit in 2030. And we build all of our sort of goals when we do quarterly cadence. So every quarter we're setting like, what's the next number and what are the things that we need to do to get to that. We're always revisiting what does our ideal client profile look like. In fact, in 2021, we did an assessment, and we were going after the wrong clients. And so we completely switched our portfolio, which was very painful in the middle of everything else that we were doing.
That's a tough realization to look in the mirror and go, ooh, we really screwed this up. We should be over here.
Yeah, we had a completely upside down model. And so, but we understood that because we started to, like when the client starts working with you, you know which ones are ideal, right? Like you just can tell by the way they talk to you, the things they say and the whatever. And we did so well with those. And so just even within the last 4 months, have we cleaned out the last of our non-ideal clients and really replaced them with what we think are an ideal client portfolio or profile. So it's both a constant looking back at what's working and not working, and then thinking forward of how do we continue to make sure that we're not going to be taken out by something like AI. AI, like let's say we were just 100% a social media agency. 100% social media agencies right now with AI in place are in trouble, because it is not hard to build a bunch of social media content with AI, and then you just have to know what to pick and how to use it. It's more about where it gets put out, what it looks like, how it plays into the overall plan. So some of these agencies that existed just 2 years ago that would have done just fine don't. So we have to continue to diversify ourselves and think about how I think about it probably wrong, right? Like it's every billionaire has 7 sources of income. So what are the 7 sources of income that Liger has to its disposal? And it can't all be work for hire. It also has to be a little bit of other components. We launched a display ad network this year in concert with another company that focuses on B2B. And, we could have just bought one off the shelf, but we built one so that we could go off and sell it to other agencies like us. So how do you think about it that way?
One area inside the social media marketing that I think is really interesting, I'd love to hear your thoughts on, is, we talk about the algorithm. And it's this big, scary thing that everyone will talk about, like, it's affecting this, doing all that, we're getting shadow banned. There's so many different ways people take it without like any understanding of what it actually is. I know I'm
getting shadow banned. I just know it.
I know it.
Please post this to your page, because I haven't seen any of your stuff lately, Gal.
Yeah. But I think there's an interesting thing when you start to really try to untangle it. I do the marketing with Tribe and Purpose, and there's this thing where all, kind of like we were talking about earlier, all of the tricks get covered by something. They want the algorithm to work to boost people up, but then as soon as you manipulate the algorithm, you're kind of going against it. Do you think it's something where, kind of like with the ad question earlier, is it we almost shouldn't spend that time trying to understand the minutia of it, and it's more just focus internally, because it is just that big scary thing that even if you spend all your time on it, you're probably not going to get the right answer?
What is why we move into this marketing firm idea. So if I have a person who understands content really well, SEO, social, whatever, and then we're bringing them all, and they don't have to focus on all of those things. They can focus on a category that they're very interested in, and they can understand the trends. We can then determine, okay, this is going to make this impact, but we're okay with it because we're covered over here on the content side. So like a big one, Google has announced they're going to roll out this thing that's going to look like a Wikipedia page. So like when you go do a search, instead of all these individual entries, you're going to get a long explanation that may link to some other pages. So we're already considering like, what does our content need to look like to, end up in that fit and those types of things. So it's, again, not focusing on the one thing because there's just no way to fix it off the one. It's like, well, if we do have this problem and this changes, is there another lever I can go pull to then get myself some lift while I figure out let some of that settle, cause like they'll roll out something and then they're like 2 weeks later, like, yeah, that was a bad idea. We're not doing that anymore. Right. And so it's this balance of like reacting, but reacting appropriately, okay, that's a thing, but I'm not going to go change everything right now. I'm going to stay the course. Now I need to change it. Right. But I've got enough going on in other categories that I'm not over leveraged on that one thought or that one approach.
One other piece inside like that algorithm side when it comes to social media is you'll hear I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs and small business people in small business talking about like when they're marketing on social media, and it's like that snowball. It's like just get the snowball going and eventually it'll just go and it's this amazing thing. There's a part that's always felt like that is just a completely fallacious statement. What do you think about that? Is that snowball effect remotely real? Or is it just something people shouldn't focus on?
On the social media side, I think it's really hard to predict that and to know. And, we'll have people who are like, oh, we want a viral video. And I'm like, you want one viral video? Because like, I mean, if they come to your profile and there's nothing else for them to look at, they're not going to pay any attention to you. Right. So like, what did that do for you? We've all seen the viral video and we've never seen that person again. So what, right? I do think snowball effect works really well when it relates to like content and keywords and some of those things, because you can look at a piece of content over time and perfect it and move it and start to like live within both. It impacts both, search, AI, social, the whole thing. So it's more appropriate again to that bond component of something that's going to kind of happen over time. With social, everyone gets struck by lightning every once in a while, and it's not always good that you got struck by lightning. So I don't know that there's a way to game it that way. And I do think that's probably where a lot of the, you're seeing a lot with the AI too, like the download this toolkit and we can tell you how to use AI to make $1 million or whatever. It's just the person making money is the person who's teaching you that you can make money. So,
and I think it's also the maturity of the market as well. Cause it's like when you try to like, how many big companies in the last, 5 years, make it longer, have we seen try to do something viral and it just doesn't work? Like, they create something like, look at this, it's the equivalent of, I don't know, Budweiser popped in my head. Budweiser being like, look at this cute puppy. Come buy the stuff. Like, look at this cute puppy video. And it's like, you clearly are trying it, which means it's not going to work. It's like that. There's that X factor, the virality, I guess, that you can't really instill into your own stuff.
Yeah, agreed. And like the Grimace milkshakes, have you've heard this? So the Grimace milkshakes, like they put that out and then everybody's been doing these videos around how the Grimace milkshake killed them, And so McDonald's could have totally decided to like, well, that's terrible. That's not what we wanted to do, but they've embraced it. And so often companies won't embrace it, or they won't, like the Wendy's Twitter person who's always been amazing, right? Like allowing that thing to happen the way that it needs to naturally is very uncomfortable for most companies because they want to control their image, control the look, control the blah, blah. So it's hard to like make that happen. I would say that in that kind of viral category, it's like, it's sort of a snake oil type of thing. Like you need to do all the right, it's like working out. Like there's a consistent thing where you talk about their website, their content, their SEO and social, then we're doing placement around it. Like you just follow that formula and it takes time. No such thing as an overnight success. Just really isn't. And overnight successes, don't often end up, I've rarely seen a good story, follow-up story to the overnight success. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, I always love Dave Ramsey, and he always says, I'm a 35-year overnight success.
Yes.
And, That always cracks me up because, when you're in obscurity, you're doing all the hard work to get out and be known. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, overnight success. Yeah.
They came out of nowhere 35 years ago. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 35 years. I've been working on this one thing to get it out there.
Yeah.
When you now one of the things that's interesting, I think people forget about this, is the foundational principles of marketing, and you've touched on all of them, have not changed in years,
right,
in hundreds of years. I mean, we can go back. Now you've challenged me, Camden. I'm going to pull out my copy of Meditations, and I'm going to find marketing, and marketing really is his meditation.
Well, what you're going to find is marketing comes from a really bad place, but we can talk about that in a second. So it used to be called propaganda.
Yes. Yeah. That's right. That is 100% right. But the principles are all the same. When you think about these foundation principles, how the successful marketing campaigns, propaganda campaigns are there based on these principles. What do you see when you look ahead? Is there any of these principles that, like with AI, does AI make a change to it, or another type of the AR, the augmented reality type of thing, and those sort of things? When you look ahead, do you see something that maybe is going to become a new principle to marketing?
Yeah, it's really more for me about how it's consumed. So I give this presentation called Making Sense of the Modern Day Marketing Maze. And I talk about 2008 being this sort of watershed year. And the reason it's a watershed year is not because we had an economic recession. In 2007, smartphones were introduced. Everyone was allowed to join Facebook, so social media, and we had ubiquitous internet. So we changed human behavior dramatically. And because we changed it, you didn't end up going to people's websites. You started looking at their social and their content and all other kind of things before you would go to their site. So it was a behavioral change. The pandemic created another one because a lot of the in-person and in-store places that you would go to, you don't anymore. Like I haven't been in a grocery store for a significant amount of time since COVID because I use Instacart, right? So if I'm going to hear about it, it's going to have to be on Instacart. So I look for dramatic impacts to behavior, right? Like something that's really going to change like the way people interact, because that's what then impacts marketing. So AI has an opportunity, but right now, in my opinion, it's at the prompt level of the internet. Like you have to still write things, we don't have a browser version yet, whatever. So as we move forward, like how much that gets integrated into some of the Internet of Things tools we have or whatever, I'm waiting for it. I feel like AI has like the greatest opportunity to give us a dramatic disruption that then would impact like how you have to interact and think about talking to people. Like, can they ignore stuff that they, because like AI could destroy the search engine. Like Google could go away, and then they brought out Bard, which is a close version to it. But right now, you can go to AI and ask it a question. You get your answer back. You don't have to go to any links. You don't have to whatever. So now, how do I tell AI about something I want to market to someone, right? So it's that kind of thing that is interesting to me. It's all this. It's like piquing someone's interest, making them uncomfortable. I mean, literally, that's all marketing does is make you uncomfortable. Oh, my car's not as good as I thought it was, or I could be smarter than I am, or I'm not sleeping as well, or whatever, like you got to make them uncomfortable. So what is the locations and ways that you can introduce a new idea to somebody that then makes them go, I think I need to spend money on that. I didn't think I did about a week ago, but now I do. I was running the research, one real fast story, but running the research company, I don't journal. I am not a journaler. I do not write things down. It's just not my thing. And we did a project for a company where we tested journals with people. And so we were showing them journals, and we did this for like 3 weeks, and we would take a respondent through 2 sets of journals. And I was running this project. And so we're gone for 3 weeks, 10 days. I mean, I must have seen 90 people or 90 different versions of journals. I needed to buy a journal at the end of that project so bad I couldn't stand it. I went to like a bookstore. I bought 5 journals. I was like, I'm going to start journaling. Never wrote a thing in a journal. But it would have been so repeated in my brain that I was like, I got to go buy a journal. And that's how marketing works. You make them like, you got to have it. Gotta have it.
That's right. And folks, you got to buy a journal.
Yeah.
So
I like watch these people and I'm like, oh, they love their journals. They're amazing. I got to go buy a journal. Then I bought 5. I never wrote in one of them. Not a one.
but you bought it. So there you go.
Exactly.
If you're selling journals, get a hold of Eric. Because he might just be buying a 6th one now that we've talked about it.
Yeah. It was totally the repetition.
That's right, man. This has been a very enlightening discussion, and I'm trying to remember if I'd ever heard the rectify versus the magnify entrepreneurs, and I've heard the principles of that, but I don't remember if I've ever heard those 2 words to describe it, because that's so unique. And you think about it, that ownership, the personal identity of the rectifier is so interesting, because it becomes, it's their baby. That's what we always talk about that, this is my baby and this is my identity, and nobody else can care for this baby like I can.
Yeah.
And those are the people that, they struggle to get out of the working in the business, because it's their baby.
The thing is that if you start doing the thing I do, what do I do?
Yeah.
Where is my identity? Right. And
That's
it's
right.
really hard for a lot of owners to be like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to do a bigger purpose. I have a bigger purpose. It's like, you do.
Yeah, you do, folks.
Yeah.
You
Have
do.
you created a job for yourself or a company?
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I can't remember. Is that Tony Robbins? Maybe Tony Robbins, Dave Ramsey. That's probably a fairly common one. So who knows?
Yeah.
We'll say Marcus Aurelius said that. There's your Marcus Aurelius quote for the day. Oh yeah, I'm going off on a wire here. Camden, what'd you learn?
Yeah, Eric, you had said this, and I think it's a really simple but super profound way of looking at, the AI interruption. We've been talking about it so much of, we're going from creation to curation. And that is such a really smart way of looking at it of, we're being removed from the creative aspect. There's so much that's going to change, but it's what does the other side look like? And curation is a great way to put it. So I really like that.
Eric, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
I learned I probably need to go back and look at like the Greeks and the Romans as it relates to marketing, because I think I've gone back as early as the Industrial Revolution and thought about that, right? But I'm like, where does that fit? That's an interesting consideration. Like, what's their equivalent to marketing? Because like my first introduction is like basically the rewording propaganda to marketing. Like does not have a great background if you just go back to the 20s.
Maybe you go back
30s.
Further, and it's nice.
You need to go a little further. Maybe I can find a better story, right? Yeah, there you go.
There you go. And that's funny though when you think about it, because you're right. Marketing good, propaganda bad.
I mean, it's literally, and they just renamed it. They're like, oh, propaganda. We're going to call it marketing. That's what we'll call it.
What good branding?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They rebranded propaganda to marketing.
There you go. There's your deep study, your dissertation for your doctorate in marketing, historical marketing. Yeah, Eric, this is great. How do folks find you? Learn more about what's going on with Liger? Probably check out some of those cool products y'all are helping get to market.
So we're ligerpartners.com. That's our website. And for me, social media right now, LinkedIn is like my platform. So if you go to social media, you can find me there. I have a newsletter called Digitally Inclined that comes out every Tuesday. And so you subscribe to that. And I talk about kind of digital impact as it relates to marketing and business and those types of things. So, but LinkedIn used to be Twitter, but LinkedIn now. So
now it's LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We'll have to check back and see what
it is.
shifts
Yeah,
to
it could change.
Eric, man, this has been great. I really appreciate your time. We appreciate your time and sharing with us and hanging out with us today.
Thank you so much for the invite. You didn't tell us what you learned though, Otis. I think we.
Oh, I did.
Did you?
I did. It was yeah. Oh, yeah. I just didn't frame it in I segued.
Got it. That was the rectify magnify thing. Got it. All right.
Maybe it was. Yeah. Maybe it was too much of a segue.
No, it's good. It's good. I have a book planned around that, so you'll be one of my first people to buy it. Then how about that?
There we go.
That's awesome. What? Oh, you mean the magnify versus rectify, not the segue.
No, the magnify. Yeah, you're right. I'll call the book that segue. There we go. Right.
That's awesome. All right, Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank you all for listening to the Cam and Otis Show, and a special thanks to our guest, Eric Holtzclaw, for joining us today. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to pass along to someone else so they can enjoy it too. Make sure to follow the Cam and Otis Show on Facebook and Instagram, and you can watch full videos of the show on our YouTube page. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button too. As always, the full archive of our episodes available at www.camandotisshow.com. Thanks again. We'll see y'all next time.